All right, there we go. Hopefully now we don't have an echo. Can everyone hear us now? Yeah, we're off to the usual start. All right. So my suspicion is that the sound is coming through. So we had. Okay, perfect. And I added extra latency in order to deal with some of the issues that we've had with streaming. So we'll get to that. Commander McMillan is with us. Unfortunately, his audio is not working. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to have him just give us an audio check and make sure that you guys can hear him. He is literally calling in, and we have his phone connected to our mic. So, Commander, how are you?
I'm doing great.
All right, so can everyone hear him? He's going to be a little soft, but my hope is, and I can move him up a little bit more, but hopefully everyone can hear him. Because he is obviously going to be very important to this, and I can make him a little louder as well. And with us today is 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴. 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴, how are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
Oh, very good. All right, so let's talk about what's happening right now, because it is right. Oh, Aunt Jer heard you great, so it looks like we're going good, and I'm never running with this level of latency ever again. Dear Lord. Thank you all for your patience. So what we have is roughly 2 weeks ago, 26 tourists were killed in Kashmir. Kashmir is an area that is disputed by both India and Pakistan lay claim to this area. Did I say Iran? India and Pakistan both lay claim to this. The Indian controlled part of it, or administered part of it. There was a terrorist attack. 26 tourists were killed. It has been 2 weeks since then, and India has retaliated. Now, they had already done a couple of administrative retaliations. They cut trade. They cut access to. There's 4 points. A 4-point access to a river which supplies, my understanding is, both water and hydroelectric, both of which are desperately needed in Pakistan. And a 1960 treaty requires that India allow Pakistan access to this. They have revoked that access. They have kicked everybody out of. They've kicked each other out of.
Allow me to interject here.
Please.
They turned off the water on some of the outlets, and in another one, they released the water so that the area downstream in Pakistan is flooding.
Jesus.
So it's a very deliberate screwing with Pakistan.
All right. This was a really good idea to call in, Commander. I like that. We have totally MacGyvered this situation. They have kicked each other out of each other's ports and stopped trade. That was until today, where there was an attack. Now, according to India, it was a missile attack on 9 sites in Pakistan. According to Pakistan, the attacks were actually by jet planes. They have shot down, apparently from what they're saying, they actually engaged and their Air Force shot down I would assume some form of combat air patrol. I don't know, or maybe maybe they can get off the ground fast enough. But they shot down 2 of their planes and 1 of their helicopters. There's been a lot of different reporting on whether there was 3 planes, helicopter, but that's what Pakistan is.
Let me interject.
Please.
So, since the 22 April incident, there have been border skirmishes. Patrols along the border shooting across the border at one another. I don't believe there have been any casualties in those, but there have been these incidents. Additionally, both nations started flying aircraft right along the demarcation line, kind of threatening and posturing at each other. I don't have anything that indicates those activities in the air caused any shooting incidents. But it lets you know that they're at a heightened state of alert on both sides, and they're definitely trying to provoke the other into starting something.
Well, Pakistan has already said just cutting off the water was an act of war, but
yes, technically it is.
The head of Pakistan has gone on military television, and his voice was trembling. He was so upset. He said that they are going to retaliate. He has said that it is going to be proportionate. He has said it is going to be only against military targets, unlike now this is what he said, unlike India's attack, which he says was on some military targets and some civilian. We do know there have been both military and civilian deaths in Pakistan from this attack. We had footage.
Pakistan is claiming that one hospital and one mosque were hit.
The mosque I knew about. I did not know about the hospital. And it's so from your perspective. Well, I want to get your perspective on this in a minute. The president of Pakistan has said he is absolutely going to respond. There is indication that they are mobilizing right now. There's an indication that they're mobilizing all of their troops forward. Whether this means an invasion or just some kind, I don't know. It depends on what you call a proportional response, because if you consider the water an act of war, a proportional response is anything that gets the water back. If you consider a proportional response just the response to today's attack, those are two different things.
I think you actually have to go back further.
All right,
you have
please.
To, at least in this situation, specifically talk about the terror attack of the 22nd. Okay. So 27 people are killed, 26 of whom are tourists. And the Pakistanis are not acknowledging that they had anything to do with it, nor has any terror group actually claimed responsibility. The Indians are talking about blaming it on a group. It's called TRF, which is the Revolutionary Front or something like that. It's a splinter group of a known terrorist organization that is sponsored by and receives support from the ISI, or the Pakistani intelligence service, basically. The group is called 𝐒𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐵, or it's called Taiba. So this TRF splinter group, it's assumed by most sources that that's still kind of technically part of 𝐿𝐵. They took themselves out into a separate group because the UN has declared 𝐿𝐵 a terrorist organization. So you create a new organization that's no longer on the proscribed list, and they can receive money from the outside.
Okay. Just rebrand it. And okay.
Hand waving, yeah. Anyway, the Indians had to do something to respond to that attack, as they typically do whenever there's some sort of terrorist act inside Kashmir or Jammu. They do something. So shutting off the water may have been considered their response. Why they launched the missile attacks subsequent to that, I don't know. Now, it may be that the shooting incidents along the border between these patrols, they decided to use that as an excuse to fire the missiles off. I don't know. I think one of the key things you need to look at is that Modi, who's the Prime Minister of India, Modi's popularity polls are sinking, and he needs to do something to get people back on his side. So you do the traditional wag the dog game, and suddenly you get that sudden patriotic surge. So he's potentially doing that for that reason.
Isn't that actually very similar to what happened when was it a faction of Hezbollah? I forget who was responsible for the initial massacre in the incursion into Israel. One night they went in, they killed a very large number of people and left, and that started a war that's been going on now for, what, 2 years?
Yeah.
And they've still got hostages, Israeli hostages, and the Israeli people want the hostages back. They're not even.
Figure.
Yeah, well, they've been protesting, but the protests haven't been to get rid of Netanyahu as much as to get the hostages back. And Netanyahu doesn't want to have the hostages back because as soon as the hostages are back, people want to get rid of Netanyahu to oust him because he's been such a horrific and corrupt leader. Is that roughly accurate? Yeah. Do you think that's what's happening here?
To some extent, yes. The Modi's party is a Indian nationalist party. So, for lack of a better description for the American viewing audience to understand, he's kind of a Trump of India.
Oh.
And one of the things that he's been waving the flag about all along is we need to stop the terrorist attack. We need to break Pakistan as a military threat to our country, et cetera, et cetera. So in some ways, this is a great excuse for him.
How far do you have any idea or way of knowing how far he'd be willing to take this? Because this looks like, I mean, Pakistan, if you listen to the president of Pakistan, and we apologies for not having that audio right now, but if you listen to him, he's pissed. His voice is shaking, and he's just, so... I mean, I'm sure he'll call it a proportionate response, but I doubt Modi's going to call it proportionate. So how far do you think he's willing to go?
In some ways, this would be analogous to World War I and the way things escalated out of control of the politicians. So it could easily end up with military action occurring on both sides without direct orders from higher command to do so, and they get drawn into a big conflict over that. Now, we know that both countries are nuclear powers. Will nuclear weapons get used? That's a good guess.
That Pakistan has repeatedly, and you and I discussed this, I think, Pakistan has repeatedly authorized put control of the release of nuclear weapons in the field for tactical nuclear weapons. Is that correct? That's almost like a standard practice, I think you may have said it once.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so, they delegate release authority for tactical weapons down to effectively the theater or front commander. Oh. So it's not way down the chain. It's like one or two steps, the prime minister, defense minister, military command structure.
Okay.
So it's still highly controlled. But it means that if the guy in command of the troops decides that it's warranted to employ a TAC nuke, then he can do so without having to get permission, technically, get permission from higher authority.
All right. I would like to get Xandering's take on this, but before we do that, real quick, Blonde Bombsheller 20 gift member. Oh my, that's amazing. Blonde Bombsheller, thank you so much for the 20 memberships. And you may have noticed, so for the time travelers who've been here for a while, you remember the original set, and this may not be. This is overtime, our more serious show, but there may be one thing I want to point out. Anyways, we're back to the old set, and we're slowly kind of rebuilding things. So your support is greatly appreciated, and we do apologize while we're still trying to figure and sort out some things. Everything's changed, but we're getting back to where we used to be. So thank you very much for your support, Johnny Negregard. 22 Norwegian kroner. Hello, time travelers. Slava Ukraine. Heroyam Slava. Thank you very much again for your support. And Daddy Jim, 5 pounds sterling. Hello, Nick and Commander. What an amazing community. I couldn't agree more. Commander, you can, I assume you can see me well? You're
Yes.
okay. Perfect. So, you had asked whether or not all of this was real, and I greatly prefer real sets, and all of this has meaning. Those of you who've been around know what the meaning is and significance of many of the items back here. But you, sir, have been with us for a very long time, and so we decided, of course, that we had to have something to represent you, and so we have gotten
The hippo.
this hippopotamus, which, if you are a time traveler, you know exactly why this hippo is important and why his resting spot is going to be right there next to the lighthouse, next to the. This is, and for those of you who know, like, I talk about how I've been in Russia. I picked this up a while from, this is from the Soviet Union and various other things, which we will now move on, because this is not one of those more relaxed shows. But I wanted you to know, sir, that you have influenced us enough that you are now part of the set. And this hippo,
Part of the hippo.
the hippo will remain. I was unable to find the book,
You,
so
you
I
have
rogered.
achieved that which not
Yeah.
even I have.
Well, sort of. I'm trying to get the
Big
sweet
Rick.
taste of hierarchy thing here. A pillow with the lobster that says the sweet taste of hierarchy, but we'll get to that. The book, So I Rogered a Hippo by Commander Lance Macmillan, I was unable to find. I wanted the book, but all right.
It was a limited edition.
It was a limit. Yeah, exactly. And to those of you, by the way, I don't want to undercut the seriousness of this. We've covered a lot of serious things, and I was on Greg Terry's a while back, which was delightful. He lost a fight with some water sealant and is now bald. But sometimes it's kind of laugh or cry, and we try to take these things in stride. There's unfortunately a catastrophe going on somewhere around the world all the time. So since this is usually a more serious show, let's get to it. UTV and Ham gifted one membership.
So-
Yes.
So transitioning from humorous to serious, have you heard what Trump's comment about this is?
I heard that he kind of chastised India and said something along the fact like they're always getting into trouble or they're always causing trouble.
His quote is, "They've had this fight for 1,500 years." Understand, they didn't become countries until 1947. So you get an idea of how time scale works in his mind.
Oh my God! I think he's confusing Persia and the Persians and the Arabs.
I mean, 1947, 1,500 years ago. What's a few years here or there?
What's a millennium, unfriend?
Yeah, a couple of millennium. That's what we in science call a non-trivial error. Yeah. Oh God. Well, I think I had heard that comment too. He just talks without thinking. And somebody has pointed out, and it was Flex Seal. Sorry. Somebody had pointed out that there is constantly fighting. There's kind of these skirmishes between the two. The reason we're going live with this is because, as we understand it, planes have been shot down, which is reasonably rare. Multiple planes. This is what strikes me as they're calling it a proportionate response. It is not. It is a dramatic escalation from what I'm looking at. We'll get the commander's. I want to get his Andrew's take before we ask Commander another question. But it looks to me like it's a dramatic escalation, and just the cutting off of the water is pretty serious. And if they don't bring that back, it's a dramatic escalation. So there's issues all around. Sinister Porpoise, $5.12. I'm not sure I like this spin-off of As Our Democracy Burns. Yeah, well, Is there any spin-off of it? I just hope we get a sequel show that is a lot happier and set in some other time where I'm not in denial the whole time. Xander, what are your thoughts?
It's never a good idea when two nuclear powers decide to go to open conflict, especially when both have threatened each other with nuclear weapons before.
Yeah, it's well, and I remember the first major conflict they had after they had nuclear weapons. They did release control of the nuclear weapons into the field, and the U.S. was able to broker a peace. Now, in the past, Pakistan has been on polite relations with the U.S., and we've been allies with India. That's where one of my concerns is. Pakistan is allied with China and Russia, and the U.S. is allied with India. So if this escalates far enough, at what point, I don't know if and or when we would be compelled to get involved, but we'll ask Commander that in a second. But the problem I see right now is the person most responsible historically for getting these two to de-escalate, or the office that has most successfully done this in the past, is currently held by a orange orangutan, and that's not, in my experience, conducive to de-escalation, and that he's that dismissive of it, that they've been going at it for thousands of years. All right, so thoughts, Commander?
I agree with you. The folks that have generally tried to de-escalate the system is the U.S. Sometimes Britain gets involved since they're both post-colonial states of Britain's. So, yeah, if we have the orange orangutan flinging his feces around, then, you know, he could exacerbate the problem rather than try to calm it down. And I can see him doing that because, you know, chaos is something he thinks is for him and his cronies to profit off of.
Well, and China is building the new Silk Road, which we have more than once tried to get a show done on, and it's our global warming. It's the one that it took us years to get a global warming show, just because I don't know why. Something about that topic. Everybody we tried to get like scheduled for it, catastrophe, and we didn't do the show. I want to do a show on this because this could literally, China is trying to completely revolutionize their economy and how the economy across the world works. But a huge part of the Silk Road that they're building goes through Pakistan. So they need a stable Pakistan for this to operate. The Silk Road is not, unfortunately, my area of expertise. I don't know if you know much about it, Xander. I think you've mentioned it once or twice, but I do know that India is going to protect Pakistan for that reason.
You mean China is going to?
Yes. India's going to... Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Can we take a step back? I think we need to make sure that people understand where all this starts. You know, kind of a little history lesson.
Please.
So when the British are getting ready to decolonialize, pull out of the Indian subcontinent, one of the discussions is whether you're going to have Greater India or you're going to divide it into Muslim and Hindu India. This is partially because the Muslim population of Greater India was about a third of the total population. And they felt like their rights would be repressed because in a larger state, they would have such a minority population, their voices would not be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually it was agreed that you'd have Pakistan, and understand originally Pakistan was a split country between what is today Pakistan and today is Bangladesh. Those were one country. The division occurs and you get a mass migration estimated at in the vicinity of like 50 million people displaced from both countries, immigrating to the new country that has their religious mix. It's a horribly mismanaged affair, and depending on which sources you consult, between 250,000 to 2 million people died
Jesus.
during the movement, this mass migration of people between Pakistan and India. You had lots of warfare, civil warfare, I should say, between different populations in the major cities. And honestly, this is where Gandhi becomes known for the hunger strike. He had not really done much in the way of hunger strikes prior to this. He used the hunger strike in this case to get the population of India to calm down and stop fighting against itself. So you get the partition, you get the populations, and then you have these two provinces, Kashmir and Jammu, that don't really fit either criteria, in part because they're technically semi-independent princely states ruled over by a Raja. And the agreement that the British had reached with the Indian National Congress and the Pakistani equivalent, or the Muslim equivalent, is that the princely states would have their decision on which country to join based on the Raja's decision. Everywhere else, it went off of just what was the majority religious population in that area. But the princely states, being semi-independent, their ruler got to determine it. The issue was that in those two provinces, the rulers were Hindu, and the populations were largely Muslim.
Mm.
And so Pakistan wanted to make an issue of this and say, hey, these legitimately should be part of our country because that's the majority population. And so they annexed part of those, militarily moved in and took the place. India had the majority of it under their control because, that's the way it had been declared while the British were still there. And the part that a lot of people forget is China occupies roughly 15% of those provinces. Now, nobody seems to care about it because the areas that they control are largely unpopulated. Mm-hmm. They're just mountains. But that's one of the reasons they have their finger in this pot.
Okay. We have other breaking news. Trump has succeeded, much to my surprise and to the surprise, actually, quite expected. He has united people. Again, he is a uniter. China and Europe has decided to lift all restrictions on trade in response to the Trump tariffs. This has united them into essentially a new Eurasian front. China, quote, China and the European Parliament have decided to simultaneously and comprehensively lift restrictions on mutual exchanges as agreed by the two sides, China's foreign ministry said on Tuesday. So,
does that mean restrictions on the U.S. tariffs, or is it between Europe and China?
It's between Europe and China.
So basically they're saying we're forming a new trade partnership.
Yep.
The hell with America.
Yes.
Now, what done for them?
So China and Europe has started essentially a new trade pact that is apparently it's comprehensive, but it didn't say total. So it doesn't sound like it is a total a total lifting of all trade barriers with the EU, but it's a comprehensive and simultaneous lifting of trade barriers between the EU and China. So Trump is about to have a very serious problem, but he has successfully united. He's brought people together. It's just not Americans. Yeah.
He did say that he was going to work out awesome trade deals. He
Yes.
didn't specify necessarily between whom.
That's
whether they benefit us or not.
That's true. Well, he needs more credit, I think, because nobody asked. We just assumed as president of the United States he'd be working on our behalf.
Good Lord, no.
All right. So, New York Times is reporting that at least one Indian fighter has been shot down. Let's see. Since the war between the two nations over the region in 1999, a rise in separatist insurgency, Kashmir has remained one of the world's most militarized areas. The countries have repeatedly come to the brink of war since then, including in 2019, when a bombing in Kashmir killed at least 40 Indian soldiers. Those were soldiers, and not to put. I mean, these were civilians that were clearly targeted. So, tension has not been this high since that time. So that's, I think, what we're looking at. The two pieces of breaking news that we have, completely unrelated. One, China and the EU has apparently brokered a deal for simultaneous and comprehensive lifting of trade barriers in between their respective organizations. The EU is not a country, so I can't. I was trying to find a word there. So that is that's huge. That's very big news. It just happens to come right in the middle of when we're covering what could potentially be big news. What started out as 2 weeks ago, an attack that killed 26 civilians, and was it one soldier?
No, local travel guide.
Oh, okay. So 26 tourists and a travel guide in the contested region of Kashmir has tonight escalated dramatically. India attacked 9 locations. For whatever reason, Pakistan's only reporting 5, but they're in these 3 areas. They are reporting that a mosque and a hospital has been hit. They're reporting numerous civilian and military casualties, and have said that they are mobilizing for a reply. They claim to have shot down 3 aircraft. 2 of them were fighter jets. 1 was a helicopter. And at this point, we believe that they've actually started sending some kind of missiles over already. So we believe that there is a reply underway. We will be following this on our Discord. So if you want to come join us, check us out on the Discord. We're going to drop the link to that. The way In Time works, for those of you who are new here, come join us, become a time traveler, become a member, support us. We are independent news. We are supported by our members. And the news comes most often from our members who come. We have a pretty significant newsroom, and you can get the news, even if you're not watching the show, oftentimes well ahead of mainstream media, just by being on our Discord and following the news. So I encourage you guys to join. There is Xandering. Yeah, I don't even have to tell you what's banned anymore. You're staying away from it. So any final thoughts before we go?
Let's hope that maybe, possibly, the leadership, the administration can do something to, or maybe some administration somewhere can do something to calm some hotheads. It would not be good to have 2 nuclear-armed countries going to outright war with each other. That would affect all of us.
Yes, and even if, and I'm going to actually, I meant to ask this of Commander earlier, so I'll ask him in a minute. They can release nuclear weapons, and it's not the way we'd think of it, and we'll discuss what that means in a minute. Them releasing nuclear weapons would not be the end of the world. If it brings us and Russia involved, it may. But I'm going to ask Commander about that in a second. But having said that, yeah, I think the U.S. isn't going to get involved in any healthy, productive way. But China has a very big incentive at this point to get involved at a minimum on the Pakistani side. But they don't want to see Pakistan damaged any more than it has to be. And I think the EU is going to get involved probably more on India's side. But either way, they don't want two nuclear powers going at it. There are two kinds of nuclear weapons, Commander, and I think whenever anybody hears about nuclear weapons, when I first heard, oh my God, they put release of tactical nuclear weapons in the field, I thought that what would happen is somebody would put in the launch code and a missile would come out and launch, and you'd have something 100 times the size of Hiroshima, a strategic nuclear missile hit, and is that what we're talking about? If they deploy nuclear weapons, would it be something along that scale? And what's the difference between a strategic nuclear weapon and a tactical nuclear weapon?
The difference is mostly on how it's employed and the range and the yield of the weapon. So to put this in context so people can understand, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki weapons were in the roughly 10 kiloton range. And that means the blast from that one bomb was equivalent to about 10K of high explosives.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's kind of thought today is anything from 10 below, if it's used in a tactical mode, in other words, against enemy troops in the field, that's a tactical nuke. If you're firing big things at cities which are above 10 kilotons, those go into the strategic weapon range.
So if either of them were going to use anything, at least it would start at the tactical level, and I assume it would get basically every country in the world to come out and say, hey, we're going to, one would hope.
Yeah, and the typical weapon you'd expect to see from India or Pakistan would, I'd say, range from 1 to 5 kilotons in a tactical mode.
All right. And we've even had that discussion because it was rumored, and we've thought about Putin deploying tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. He doesn't want to wipe Ukraine off the face of the map, which would be a strategic weapon, but he wants to, wipe out, an army and or a bunch of defenses. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we go?
This could get very ugly very quickly, so keep your eyes out. But at the same time, we've had so many of these crises between these two countries that sound like everything's about to go up, and then they just the tension evaporates. So based on that record, one would assume that will happen here. So there's a reason to be optimistic.
All right. Thank you for saying that, because I think that's definitely worth noting. Is that they've even had worse tensions than this, and it was de-escalated. So it's doable, but
they've fought since partition. I think it's 4 significant major wars, and never used nukes in any of those.
All right. Zandering Commander, thank you for joining us. All of you in the live chat are time travelers. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who has donated. It's been Very helpful and very much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you. Our next scheduled show is 9 p.m. Eastern. It's downtime with Commander McMillan on this coming Thursday. But we're expecting a number of interesting things to happen over the next couple of weeks, maybe this week, maybe next. So as always, make sure that you've got the bell on for notifications, because if we're streaming and it's unscheduled, something is probably up somewhere around the world. For those of you who are just joining us, India has retaliated against targets in Pakistan for an attack that occurred 2 weeks ago against 26 tourists and a tour guide. Pakistan is swearing a counterstrike. They claim to have shot down 2 planes and a helicopter. Both of these are nuclear armed countries. Also, while we were discussing this, China has announced that it has reached a deal to dramatically, well, let me use the language that they used, which was to simultaneously and comprehensively lift restrictions on mutual exchanges. This, by the way, sounds like it is not just economic exchanges, but quite possibly intellectual, like universities, exchanges of information. This strikes me as, at least the way it's framed, whether or not, and I suspect that's deliberate, the way it's framed strikes me as this is not just an economic deal, that they are trying to bring China and the EU closer together. And, that's what Trump does. He's a uniter. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday for Downtime with Commander McMillan. Have a good night, all.
Take care.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.